I'm Ann Davison Sattler. I grew up in Texas, and becoming an adult there, I made some assumptions when it came to voting and elections. Because my interests were in working with refugees, I wanted to go into crisis management, where people, going into places where people were fleeing from. And I wanted to work with people who were often overlooked in regular society, be that homeless people. I would go out, and back then they would collect cans and redeem them for coins and use the money to help themselves. I would work in what was called back then halfway houses for people who were recently released from prison and were trying to return to being contributing members of society. I helped a woman who had recently lost her vision. She was adapting to life. And I taught English because I could see the economic and educational opportunities that would provide for people. And I also worked in a UN refugee camp on the border of Cambodia, where people were fleeing civil war, losing limbs and family members from landmines and violence. And to me, they were the epitome of homelessness, people without a home or a homeland to return to. Well, life happened, and interruptions came, and I didn't get to work in that field for my entire career. And now I'm a lawyer, a mom to two young kids, and living in Seattle for the past 23 years. And I've come to some realizations, even though I still do some of those same things with my time. I've come to the realization that I had voted Democrat based on the assumptions that I thought that party was one that wanted to help and uplift marginalized populations, providing access and opportunity to be heard when they normally wouldn't be. But here in Seattle, that's taken a different turn than what I have known it to be. Around 2015 or so, I started having to come up with explanations and answers that were age appropriate to my young kids' questions, basically on a daily basis, because of what they were observing around them. People were starting to live alongside our roadways, and it would just multiply. Like every year there was more and more and more. And the questions I would have to answer, like, why did that man come out of the bushes and yell at us and chase us, to my kids? Why can't we touch that shiny thing in the grass, which was a needle? And why is that person sleeping on the sidewalk when we didn't know, obviously, if the person was asleep or passed out, because we didn't know, was the person there because they were addicted, or were they there because they were battling mental illness that was untreated? Did they have both? But these were questions I had to start to address to my kids, because that's the only world that they knew, was that some people were living like this, and they even knew this wasn't right, that something was very wrong, that these people clearly needed help, and yet nothing was being done. So I started to really question, who are the people making these decisions? Because we're spending a lot of money on what's being called homelessness, and yet the problem is growing, and the dollars are increasing, and there's not really much bettering that's being done, no improvement that's happening in people's lives. And in fact, in 2015, the city of Seattle and King County declared a state of emergency on homelessness. And then they both quickly just did nothing. I mean, it's just increased over that time period. And now here we are 5 years later, and in COVID-19 in 2020, and we have people at more risk, right? They're living in these unsanitary, no hygiene access, inhumane, not compassionate conditions. And when I started to come to the realization that back in that UN refugee camp that I'd worked in, those conditions there were more sanitary, hygienic, and humane than we were allowing people to just subsist along the roadways of Seattle. I started to realize that the Democrat Party that I knew had started to move so far left that I didn't recognize it anymore. And as I started to talk about, why is this acceptable? Why are we spending all this money and not actually seeing benefit for people? Why is this occurring? I got a lot of pushback and a lot of intolerance by established power holders in the Democrat Party, that I couldn't ask those questions. And I've even been told that some of them prefer that people live in tents alongside the roadways and not be in FEMA emergency shelter. I've come to the realization that I can't be a part of that anymore. If it means being part of that far left Democrat Party is in Seattle means that you you're not good problem solvers with a lot of tax dollars, because that's what's happening, or you don't know your solution and your approaches aren't working, or you won't admit that they're not working, or you are wanting to capitalize on the status quo by leaving it and using the plight of people to further a political purpose. I don't want anything to do with that. I find that not only unacceptable, but it's unconscionable to me. I want us to be actually doing good work with the tax dollars we are providing for people that clearly need help. And then in the midst of all of that, we have people who can self-care and just need shelter, and they're being overlooked. And by allowing this to continue, we have people who want to take advantage of it, and they're being bad actors in the midst of it. And so this is not a way to move forward to pursue a political agenda. This is a way to alienate people and to shame people and actually be intolerant of saying we require there to be approaches that are actually working and not to try to do something else with the use of the plight of people. They want to demonize business, which is really going to be what we have to carry our load on as we exit COVID-19. We will need to rely on business to help us come out of this crisis that we're in, not demonize them. And they want to use urban decay and the visible destruction of the environment. We spent millions of dollars to restore creek habitat right here in Seattle, and only to allow a few years later people to camp along that creek and use it as their toilet and trash can. When we spent millions of dollars to restore the delicate habitat there, and now it's just wasted. I don't call that being green. I call that being wasteful, and I call that not paying attention to what's going on, or not caring, or again, using it for a political purpose, none of which is acceptable to me. So I've learned that these special type of Democrats that are here in charge, making these decisions in Seattle, I just can't be a part of that anymore. I require there to be more. I want my kids to see a better example of how we problem solve. When we see there's an issue, we step forward and we take care of it. We don't just leave it and let it fester and start to see a way that we can take advantage of it. So I don't know what they're doing here. It breaks my heart what they've done to our city. And they've left me here in the middle, wondering, what are they doing? And frankly, I don't care what they're trying to do with it. I just know I can't follow them. So I've had to walk away and say that there are other ways and better ways to solve problems. And they have to be done for the better of everybody. We cannot allow the quality of life to go down for everyone, and people to still be needing help, and the cost to continue to rise. This is not the way to move forward. We must evolve as a society, and that means working together. And this is not how it's happening. So I've had to walk away.